Now playing the Artist for Artist podcast.
In a world full of podcasts, three brothers decide to change the game. This year, see the podcast that everyone's calling amazing.
Artist for artists, artist for artists, to artist for artists.
This is the Artist for Artists podcast with your hosts James, CJ, and Hennessy.
What's happening, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Artist for Artists podcast, a platform where we give our views on the music and media industry through real-life storytelling. You guys already know the crew. I got my guy to my right. We got Jay.
You.
Got my guy to my left, CJ Michael. And today, what I want to talk about today, I want to talk about hip-hop. I want to talk about the 50th anniversary. I want to talk about where hip-hop is today, right? The state of hip-hop today. And I have some stats because I wanted to be prepared.
Okay.
Right? So I was
you
reading.
are prepared, brother.
I appreciate that. I was reading this report that said by June of 2022, so last year, the hip-hop genre had 6 #1 Billboard albums. Okay? So by June of 2022, there were 6 #1 Billboard albums for the hip-hop genre. June of 2023, so a year later, 0. Zero that charted #1 on Billboard. So I guess to kind of open up the conversation, like, can you guys think of anything off the top of your head of maybe like why that is, or what has kind of shifted the trend from, hip hop being so prevalent, at least from a Billboard, because it still is prevalent, but I'm saying from a Billboard charting perspective to now, halfway through 2023, there was not one. Anything you can think of maybe why, or
You want to go, Jay, or you want me?
I can go. I mean, I would just think it's because nowadays, and I could be wrong, but a lot of things are very gimmicky, and not necessarily the music, but everything geared around it. So it's like when you get to the music, do you really value what you're hearing, or do you value more of the lifestyle of the person that's singing it or rapping it or performing it? It's like I care more about what I'm seeing every day, whether it's nonsense, whether it's the gimmicks to get me to realize that you're doing something. I'm more like people could be more invested in that than they are in your actual music. So 100%. When you actually put something out, okay, that's out. What you about to do tomorrow?
Exactly.
Like, cause you always on here doing something. So I think nowadays it's just been a lot of that. It's like it's the gimmick behind the music now that creates more of a buzz and more of a notoriety than the actual music. In some cases,
yeah.
Then you get the ones who are just prime time, like what type of time it is with certain particular artists, which is why it's always, in my opinion, that same caliber of artist that peaks every time.
Yeah.
And so that could be because of the work,
the
groundwork.
And there's a couple points that I have with that too. One of the main points, going back to your question, is for me, it's more like how there's fast fashion.
Yeah.
Right? We know that what we getting from Shein ain't gonna last.
Right.
We know what we getting from Temu ain't gonna last. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing with the music. It's like it's fast music, it's fast fashion. It's just being milled and put out.
Yeah.
And it's not actually a creative aspect to it. There's no actual structure to it. There's no actual, and I'm using just time-wise, right? So let's think about this. We want to call the golden age, they call the golden age of hip-hop the 2000s, right? That's what, and that's fair to say, right?
I think that's
not golden age, but you know what I mean. Like,
one
it was the most marketable,
prevalent.
That's where the business, the monetary value of the business, and the creative kind of worked in
marketing,
the same,
like liquor brands, all that type of stuff.
Right, everything started to work there, right? But when you think about the 80s, like the artists, right? Why is it that from the 80s to the 2000s, in the 2000s, you never had any 80s, 90s artists? You didn't really have them. Like, those who were able to extend their longevity, like LL Cool J, those are one-offs, whatever. Yeah, we get that. But the majority of artists that was 80s and 90s, they didn't survive until the 2000s, right? But all of the 2000 artists are surviving in this next millennium. They doing, 20, 25 years, 30 years of their music. And for me, it's just that investment of it actually being, like he said, it was gimmicky, right? It was those people, we didn't really have the curtain behind to know. Like, we thought, like, what you said was true. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Now it's, the curtain has been pulled.
Yep.
And it's hard for the hip-hop to, as a culture, hip-hop is always based on you being truthful about what you did and who you are. And that's where we respect it. Now, it's okay. Yeah, Drake, you got put out there for not writing. It's okay. Or this person, it's okay because it's about the money. Same thing's happening with the NBA, not to shift gears, but same thing. It's always a certain point in any industry when the money starts to overvalue, and that's in any industry.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything starts going the other way.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, no, and I think both of you guys have valid points, and I think that where we are in music, we're in like that TikTok music era. I feel like people aren't putting as much value into creating a project that's full of great songs. They're more focused on that one hit that people are going to be using for their TikTok videos, their Instagram reels, things like that. And I think that's what labels are kind of looking at too. How is your social presence? How is your following? How are people engaging with your content? And I think with that, it's a very slippery slope when you start going that way. Because with social media, we're all on it. The way that it works, as quick as that person might like your content, follow your content, that's just how quick they can forget about you.
Right.
And I think that's what we're seeing with music, because every Friday I get a report of the music that's dropping. I listen to a majority of it, but by the next Friday, I'm done with that album. I'm on to the new. It's like turn and burn type of thing.
But that's when you have to invest in your fan base or invest in the ones who actually enjoy you and enjoy your music. You build that. You don't necessarily build to keep the majority of the world engaged every single time you drop something. The goal is that every single time you drop something, you gain more of what's already stored up as far as like your base, your fan, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right.
So,
I'm not looking at you like that. I'm looking at you like on some like I'm ready to jump in because you're right. Like that's what I'm looking like. Say it.
Go ahead. Finish it up.
But to that point, right? And what he was saying was, how long has Kendrick been out?
In it.
Kendrick was out in the 2000s, right? How many albums has Kendrick dropped in the last 10 years?
Doesn't drop that frequently.
But he's notable.
Yeah.
Same thing for Cole. You know, I mean, Nicki will drop an album now and it'd be fine. Yep. You know what I'm saying? So I think based on what you're saying also too is it's just, because everything has a pro and con to it, right? Like you said, we're in the TikTok era, right? And by you saying that, I'm not saying that's wrong or right or whatever, but by you saying that's like, yes, artists are driving their IPs towards monetizing the social media 30-second thing, right? But I just heard on a Drink Champs episode that Akon, his whole career, when he figured out that they were charging $4.99 for a 5-second ringtone, that he decided to make his music for that $5.99 ringtone. But what was the difference here then? Because if he made that decision and then the industry is making this decision with TikTok, what is the actual difference? You know what I mean? Because he was able to have a whole catalog still based off of that. And it boils down to it just being what he said. And it's one thing, right? It's artistry, right? It's being able to say, you know what? I'm going to put out the best version that I believe.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to build that fan base organically to in any business, right? Like, you know, it's supply and demand.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're going against the grain for supply and demand, you're not going to get the respect of that industry. Now the supply and demand for the industry right now is ratchet women.
So
which is why I was going to say then, it's like, all right, cool. So if that's going to be the goal, which is fine. Like everything could be monetized and all of that type of stuff. But then you also have to say, okay, where maybe hip hop, well, maybe music didn't fall off, but what is it now? Because what we're talking about are things that's refreshing to us.
Yep.
You understand what I mean? It's like if I hear Kendrick put out a new album, it's refreshing to me. It may not be refreshing to the 14, 15, 16-year-old that is refreshed by
That's accurate.
Ice Spice, who is refreshed by, you know, other new artists who are out here, which is fine. But then it's like, okay, so then what is music now?
That's a great question. I think it depends on what artist we're talking about.
So,
but just kind of like overall, because it's kind of like, you know, when you look at the music business and you see kind of like things that has happened in the past, like how artists, like you said, like even in the 2000s, how marketing and music and artistry kind of like were neck and neck. So it's kind of like, all right, with music now, everything kind of had that history. It's like of that type of partnership from some type of marketing or outlet.
Yep.
And now it's TikTok. It may not necessarily be like the prime thing, which was commercials, which was like, you know what I'm saying, making the artist pair up with a brand, which is still a thing now, but it's not as big as it is. Well, how much are your streams? What is it on TikTok? So it's kind of like the same thing that it was back then. It's like, well, who are you partnering with? Who is your brand? Who's doing this? As far as, well, what is your TikTok? So now it's like, well, then what is that now? Like, what is music now? Like, how is that handled now?
Well, I think the biggest thing that people generally overlook is there's struggle, but there isn't. Like, and here's what I'm saying. If you look at historically, right, anytime hip hop has made any great leaps and bounds, there was something super troubling going along with the personal space of people's lives, right? You had the crack era, you had depression, you had just the war on drugs, you had the police brutality. Anytime there was a shift culturally on this side of it, there was a shift culturally within music, right? And right now, like, I mean, we kind of all living our best lives a little bit. It's not like it was kind of, you know, and me having and it's funny that you just said that about what is it now for a 15-year-old, right? I just got in the car with my son the day before yesterday, right? I'm driving him to his basketball practice. He is 15. And I'm always ready for the boo, 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 and all that drill. You know, I'm cool. I'm here for it, right? But he plugged up his phone, and I'm like, all right. And the first song he plays is Big Pun's "It's So Hard." Yeah. And he's rapping these lyrics word for word, and I've never introduced him to the song. It's one of my favorites, sorry. Yeah. One of my favorites, never introduced him to the song. And then after that, he throws on a SZA song. And then he moves on into the whole rappers that we will not know from drill music, you know? And I think what it is the access, right? It's their access. That we had to, when we had the access, we were kind of delving in a place where, out of a plate that was kind of given to us. Like, it's like, all right, well, this is what we have. They have a buffet. And they can just go and how I feel is what I want to listen to type thing.
For sure. But I still think it ties back to TikTok, because how did your son know that song? You probably heard it on a TikTok video that played it. That's a viral TikTok sound that everyone's using.
So I asked him that question.
Yeah.
Where'd you hear the song at? He said, oh, my boy Frankie. His boy Frankie's the same age. He's Caucasian, same age, 15, 16 years old. Probably, I'm not gonna lie to you, he got in my car. And at first I was like, it's Frankie, you know, not giving him the, you know, I don't hand out the black card people as much as y'all think. But I look back and I kind of resonate with Frankie because the way he was talking from the back seat, I wouldn't think that he was from his background.
Got you.
And that's just all of the fallout from just hip hop just changing culturally in people's lives. But it's their access. At the end of the day, I can sit here and hit a button, right, and have an algorithm. If I like one other song, algorithm's gonna tell me about this other song, right? Which is fast music anyway, fast fashion, like I said for you earlier. So I think that the access is the biggest thing, right? Like the access for them is the biggest thing. I don't have to ride with this team.
Yeah.
I don't have to, because I can ride whenever I want. I can leave whenever I want. I can talk to whoever I want. I would never be a diehard this person's song. No, they like singles.
For sure.
Songs.
I feel like it's less, I feel like the state of music where we're at, I genuinely feel like it's less about the actual music though.
Yeah,
it's about the individual themselves. And a prime example of this, I was just talking to my cousin about this, Meek Mill. Meek Mill was lit late 2000s, 2010 era, like Meek Mill. We all know Meek Mill. Meek Mill just dropped an album a couple weeks back.
He did?
Exactly. Sold 13K. First week. That's not a good
Somebody
first
else
week.
had a bad first
week. So it
week.
has to do
Girls?
the City Girls.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm saying it has to do with your personal brand, your personality. Someone like Tekashi 6ix9ine, music is absolutely horrible. I'm sorry if you guys are fans of it. I don't think his music is that great. The dude is a Billboard selling artist.
Really is though.
He gets a ton of love on social. He gets 2 million likes a post.
Even after the snitching.
That's what I'm saying. So that is a prime example. That's what I'm saying. It's more about your personal brand than it is about the actual music itself today. And I think that's one of the main reasons as to why Billboard's looking at it and being like, okay, you guys are getting all these, views on TikTok, but the actual quality of the music is not there. It's not what it was. And
so it just needs to be a standard. And I think that's what's starting to happen is like with hip hop, there's just people are starting to feel like look at the standard of it. Like it's great. I don't mind you having the music, but again, anything in hip hop that was notable to us was always politically driven or.
But then they also cared about stuff like that. And you also have to think about it too. It was moments where events would occur, and there was moments that changed in hip hop or music, period. But then there was also things that were happening in the world that people were acting like weren't.
Right.
And it made certain artists who had the heart for that to speak up about it and make songs that brought awareness to certain things that was going on. So even with that, what new artists would you even see in that light that will make that type of authority within their career to say, hey, look, I know what y'all like, but then there's also stuff that's happening that as an artist, if I have a platform, I need to speak on it. Not saying that they have to. There's some that does and some that doesn't. But when you're speaking about things where you're like, okay, parallel to like certain moments, like we had that, it also goes with the type of artists that they were being developed and the type of artists that was out at that time.
Right,
too.
I agree.
You look at the artists now, do you think that some of the artists in this time would even care?
But it's also
to say something.
Yes.
It's like, hey, look, I know what's going on, but it ain't in this household, or it ain't that close to my doorstep, or it's like, well, why? I mean, at this point, I do it once my train is like at the station. Right now, I'm gone. Like I left the station and I'm out. So it's like until I get to my whatever stop that is, then I might. But then it's like, okay, well,
right.
You don't.
That's
really,
the self-sacrificial thing. Yeah. But like. To like one of my favorite rappers, right? Like that I'll tap in with is Joyner Lucas.
Fire.
Right? We can say that Joyner Lucas is fire. He brings up the topics. He says the things that people, you know what I mean? And then there's what's homeboy's name? I know his name right now. But he's always with his wife, as his family, African artist. Not African, he's African, but he's not an artist. Toby.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Saying all the things that he's supposed to say that will transcend hip hop and do all this other stuff. And he is on Jimmy Kimmel. He is on that. The other problem that we're kind of overlooking and gaslighting is just the narrative and what the fast money that the industry wants to make too. You know what I mean? Like it's like, okay, well the kids like this, like for instance, like you have so many different spectrums. Yes, there's Nicki, right? There's City Girls, there's Cardi, they call it strap music, and then you have the Sexy Reds. That's like, we thought Cardi was bad. You know what I mean? Like not bad, but you know what I mean? Like we thought it was, Cardi's out here, watch your daughters. But then we get a Sexy Red, right? And we're like, Cardi's not that bad. But now you have an artist like Sexy Red, and they're coming out with things that are like her lip gloss is called
that shit is crazy.
Like the names of the lip gloss.
I think she's lit though. Overall, I'm a sexy.
Know what that is?
Every Sexy Red is lit. Bro.
Every label has to get a double. If it works for them, we gotta get that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right.
You got a Cardi, we gotta find a Cardi. You got a City Girl, we gotta find a City Girl. You got this, we got that, and that's when you start seeing like these new kind of like something that looks familiar but it's new. It sounds familiar but it's new. It's like y'all done went and found y'all a replica of like another joint, and it's just like it's like the song that never ends.
So what's wrong? You're
saying until it becomes a problem. Yeah, we gonna keep rolling it out.
So what you're saying? The cookie cutter is the problem in hip hop right now. Yeah. Gotcha.
I mean, the females are running the hip hop game right now.
Well,
they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. I caught myself. I ain't gonna lie. Listen, don't judge me, y'all. I ain't gonna lie. I caught myself in the house one day. Tracy was talking. We said something. I was like,
See, that's how I was like.
I was like, yeah. She was looking at me like, I was like, I don't even know why I said that.
Loving the show? Hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your go-to platform. Stay tuned and stay connected. Catch you on the next episode.